I guess we'll just do a quick review because Christine, you weren't here when we did the last lesson and the battery died. So we'll just run over it real quick. The question was asked, some of you might have to help me remember what we talked about. But the question was asked, we had the word, Solomon gave us the word nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. Okay, and he was showing us nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin and nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. And he was showing us that this is a VTI and this is a VTA. And so with this one, we need an inanimate object. We used, what did we? Muscassin, okay, a shoe, right? But he was showing us that you can eat a shoe and you can eat shoes. I'm doing the presentation for you, so I'm going to make sure, yeah. So you can have a shoe or you can have shoes and the verb doesn't change.
Okay. Every VTI or just all?
Every VTI.
Okay.
So, nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. It's the same verb. But when you have animate objects, you have to have what they call number agreement. So if you have plural, like nīhithaw, I like the taste of rabbits, nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. But if you're going to eat more than one wapus, then you have to have number agreement. So your verb has to be marked for the plural.
Only when it's a VTA.
Only when it's a VTA. Because in a VTA there's two animates, and we mark the number agreement for the animates. Okay? So Solomon was showing this. Now, I believe what happened was Ramona was trying to figure out what weakestain means. And I said, well, I'll show you how I would go about finding that out on my own. Instead of having to ask someone, I can use the dictionary.
Because nobody's around.
Right. So we have to find out what the dictionary form of this is.
I find it tasty.
Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. Okay. So is that in the Cree words dictionary? Or is that Musquecheese? Okay. So what I was telling everyone before was that as learners, if you want something that's patterned, that follows patterns, which I'll show you in a minute, there's really only one dictionary that absolutely follows that pattern at this point in time, and that's the Cree words dictionary.
Cree words.
Yeah, that's what the title is. So if we were going to look this up, all the verbs in the Cree words dictionary are in your 3S form, which means she or he.
Right.
And this is what we talked about in story time, where she or he does, right? The S. She or he hears, she or he sees. So when we look it up in English, we look up sees. We don't look up see. We don't look up I see. We look up he or she sees.
Right.
And if you're using the app, you can just type sees. You don't have to type she or he.
And it'll come up with.
And if you get
S-O.
No.
Oh.
There's a difference between she or he sees something,
Which would be
and
a
she or he
VTI,
and she or he sees someone.
Which would be a VTA.
Exactly.
God, seriously? Every time a VTI will be something.
The only time that it's not there is when it's semantically awkward for the translation of English, like if it was a word that didn't make sense when you said to see someone, but it's still transitive. They're really rare, so for the most part, this is a good way to remember. So, yeah, so to recap, we have to find the 3S form. So what we can do, and what I was showing that there's 4 patterns that we need to learn. This is kind of complementing the other presentation where we talked about to know what to say, we need the 4 types of verbs. Same thing. We have our VAI, we have our VTI, we have our VTA, we have our VII. These are patterns, okay? We can call them classifications or categories, but they're patterns. So if we want to take a verb and change it so we change who does what, we need to find out which pattern it follows. So if you're looking a word up in English, so you look up the word you want to say she or he sees him. Well, you look up sees someone, right? Because the S period, O period gives you the VTA. And then you put it through the VTA pattern to find out what you want. If you wanted to look up she or he sees, like as in not blind, but just in a general sense, like I see, but not like I see you, or not like I see someone, I just see, like I'm not blind, I have vision, in other words. You'd look up sees, and you'd find this one, and you'd put that through the VAI. Now, if you're looking up from English to go to Cree, you're going to find that it has the label in it in the Cree Words Dictionary. It has the VAI or VTI or VTA, etc., right next to it.
Yeah, it does.
So
I know what that meant.
So it tells you which pattern. So that tells you which pattern you have to put it through. Okay? But, yeah, where else did we go from this? I'm having trouble remembering.
There was something underneath that VTI, VAI, VAI.
Well, I think we did some examples, right?
Yeah, and we did the, like,
Oh, to finish.
three,
Yeah,
yeah.
we went from here. So she asked me what this verb meant, and she says, I can't find it in the dictionary. And I said, okay, well, look up weakest stum. She said, why would I look up weakest stum? How do you know it's weakest stum?
How do you know? Because it is the pattern? It's a VP.
Is that the Cree Words Dictionary, or is that the Musqueam Dictionary?
Musqueam says VP, and Cree Words, Eric Wolvengrace says Wickstum VTI.
There you go. VP stands for verb phrase.
Okay.
I'm not going to get into the details of the dictionary, but when we follow these patterns, we have to jive with the one dictionary. We can use the other dictionary once we get more familiar with the patterns.
Or
We can use
just cross-reference.
Yeah, and in different ways. But for now, when we start out, we want to stick to one because
Right.
these patterns were derived based on
See,
how
I
that.
didn't know that. That's awesome. I know.
Okay, so so she said, well, how do you know it's weakest stum? And I said, well, when we know this pattern here, we know that it goes like this. Oops. Just write that a bit cleaner for you. And so on and so forth. And once we have those patterns stored in our mind, I see that, and I know that there's certain rules with each of these patterns. If we memorize the rules, it's faster than memorizing every single one.
Which is what I've been doing.
There's nothing wrong with that, right? One's multiplying, the other one's memorizing the multiplication tables. They're both good, depends what technique. But for searching things when you have time to write it out, if you know the theory is easier to learn than all the different ones. Eventually you want to memorize the multiplication tables, but if you know how to multiply and you want to multiply right now, you can do it right now. One of the rules with the VTI is any short A changes to a long E if it's the first or second person, if one or two in it are involved. Now this is first person, this is second person, this is third person, singular. Since the first person is involved, right, we have the ne, and we have the n, then the A changes to an E here. Same here. But it doesn't in the third person. So when I see nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, this EN tells me that's a VTI because it's the only one that starts with ne and ends in EN. Okay? Now if this was a VAI, right, like mich so or etoske, I think that was the example I used. If I give you etoske, so that means work. How do I say she or he works?
Atoskio.
Right, etoskeo. But how do I say I work? Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. So what happens is we add this, and we add this, and then there's a rule in the VAI where any long E changes to a long A if first or second person. So I keep
Where
writing.
do I find those rules?
Gene Okamasis published a book.
Who?
Gene Okamasis
Oh, okay.
published a green book that's called Cree Language of the Plains. That's one of the resources.
Okay.
It has all of these paradigms in it,
All
as
of
well
those
as a
theories.
plethora of more.
Okay.
But we know that that E is going to change to an A. Therefore, any first person conjugation in a VAI pattern can never have an E. Ever, because that E is always going to change to an A. As a side note, that game we always play, when I come up, that's all VAI pattern. That's why we have that dark blue card, the E to the A card, is because they always change here. Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. We don't say nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, we say nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin.
Right.
But in this pattern, we change it to nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. Does that make sense? So the trick is we have to know how these patterns, we have to be able to, it's like a two-part. One, you want to know the pattern so you can construct the word. The other one, you need to know the pattern so you can deconstruct the word and put it in a different form. Myrtle will know, like, if she gives me a word, I'll sit there and I'll start spewing out other ones within the pattern. And it seems really weird, and I've kind of apologized to a few people here because what was the word you gave? Napakate pakīsiwin. Yeah. Napake as a joke, she said, "Are you a pancake man?" And I sat there and I said, "Well, and then I went through the whole paradigm. So I said, "Are you a pancake man? Is he a pancake man? Is she?" And she kind of looked at me strange. But what I did is I took the pattern and I started fossilizing the word within the pattern. Now, again, this is like expecting or asking for patience from fluent speakers, because it'd be like you and I are talking and I say, or you say, "You eat." And I say, "I eat, you eat, she eats, he eats, we eat, they eat," and it just sounds really weird. But as a learner, I'm sitting there running it through the picture frame, or the frame of all the different, like the pattern, and it's giving me sign of leverage.
Need to know the pattern.
Right. So we went over the VTA pattern, or one of the VTA patterns, and we went over how to use that chart. Do you want to do that now?
Sure.
You got it in front of you?
I'm still sitting.
Is it still there?
I'm still focused. Merle, is this helping you? No? Not yet? Have you studied it all? In a book? On language? No. Okay, that's fine. This is brand new for him. Okay.
For sure. And then we're jumping. I'm kind of... For sure.
I don't want to run anymore.
I'm like taking you up in the helicopter and I'm showing you the whole landscape, but eventually we're going to have to walk all the trails to know each one, right? But I'm trying to just give you an overall to kind of... And again, it'll be videotaped, so like a year later from now, you can be like, "Oh, what was that thing you talked about?" And then we can go back to the video and be like, "Oh, it's that, nīhithaw or whatever we were talking about," right? So that's kind of the idea here. We used nīhithaw, okay? So Solomon gave us nīhithaw. And again, how do I look that up in the dictionary? Well, I look at it and say, look up nīhithaw. How do you know to look up nīhithaw? So again,
Peace.
pardon?
She enjoys drinking pop. Or alcohol.
Which
Who
dictionary?
likes her liquor?
Christine, which dictionary are you in?
Cree words. Eric Wolvengray. She or he likes his or her liquor.
Nīhithaw. Solomon's. I want to see this.
No, that's Wikipedia. It's a Wikipedia. You need a TW.
So you're missing this letter right here.
You need the W.
So I should mention there's 17.
She enjoys the taste of him?
Yeah.
Them.
Them meaning animate noun.
Right, but how did you know to look up? How did you know to look up nīhithaw from
Is that a
nīhithaw?
guess? To be honest with you, I'd say it's a piece of that. It's a word, and that's what I've been
Okay.
looking at and see.
Let me show you a way you can be confident. So when we learn our patterns, we learn to segregate the root. So let's look on your chart there in front of you. And look in the top left corner. Do you see anywhere where it says NI and a blank space and an AW?
Yeah.
Okay, look to the left of that. What does it say?
First person.
1S,
Singular.
right?
Yeah.
Look all the way to the right side of that page. What does it say?
3P or 3S.
3S. Okay, so this is 1S to 3S. I see him or her. Okay?
Okay.
So we look at the two pieces, NI and AW, and we take those off. Now we've got we, Kip. Now tell me what's in the yellow box. There's only one yellow box.
Orange.
Yellow. There's only one box there.
EW.
Perfect. That's the form you look up in the dictionary.
This is the right one.
That's the form you look up in the dictionary.
Oh, okay.
So with that chart, I can give you any VTA, and you can dissect it to get the form to look up the meaning of the word I give you. It's a long process. And I'm sure Myrtle will be bored trying to do something like this.
You can do VAIs on here too?
No, that's just a chart for VTA.
VTA Pugo.
Yeah. And then there's a whole bunch of extra tidbits on the bottom right. Don't look at any of that. That's just kind of
Oh, yeah.
benefactive and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay.
So now let's give me a, let's say we're going to use the word, do you know how to say she hears him? Or I hear him? Yeah. Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, okay. Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin and TH. Okay. So you know this word. So this is I hear him or her, right? Okay. You've got that word in your mind. It's like a dot. But language isn't just random dots. Language is like a net, right? All these different forms are linked together. So using that chart, let's figure out how to say they hear him or her. Or do you know how to, yeah, hang on. Do you know how to say that first of all?
It ends with wow.
Okay, so let's go through the process.
Okay.
This is I hear him or her, right?
Right.
So we know that this is I hear him or her.
Right.
1S to 3S. So which line has 1S to 3S?
That's the first line.
Okay.
Did you get it?
If you move over and watch the chart,
I don't have a chart. I need some.
but if you just, I only have 2, so if you guys can share.
He's cheap.
No, I like it like this.
He's cheap. Thanks, Christine. Okay, so looking on that line where that first blank is, what's on either side of it?
On either side of the blank, N-I-A-W.
So NI, we take that off. The AW, we take that off.
Right.
Here's the root of the VTA,
Right.
Peitao. Okay,
Yeah, got that.
and we're trying to say she sees, or they see him or her. So we want the line that says 3P to 3 oviative, like the 3 with the, like this.
3P. P-Tau what? 3P? Yes.
So if we look on the chart, we're looking for the line that has 3P and 3 with the,
Oh, with a 1.
yeah, it's an apostrophe, but yeah.
P-Tau-wa-wi. P-Tau-wiu.
Can you spell it out for me? So,
P-E-H-T-O-W-A-W-I.
okay, so we're looking in the left column, the leftmost column.
Right?
Look where it says 3P.
Got it.
Okay, it should be close to that yellow box.
Yep.
What's the first space say?
Ewok.
There we go. Ewok. We can put our root in there.
P-Tau-wi-wa.
They hear him or her. Like, this would be like, they hear Bill. And this A tells us that that's the person here. So you can see using that chart, we can find the root of the verb. And then we can be confident instead of guessing and expecting a correction. If we take that chart, and we take time, we can find the pattern to find what we want to say.
Try another one.
Okay, what do you want to say?
Oh, I don't like it.
All right.
Jen was stealing wood.
Okay.
Dirty.
Well, let's say Jen was stealing Bill, or Jen took Bill. Okay, I'm going to use.
Should that be second person?
Can I use oatmeal? Oatmeal Bill? Yeah. Okay. Oatmeal is to take someone. Okay, that's your yellow box. What's in the yellow box, right? The yellow box is always what you find in the dictionary.
Yellow box is EW.
So we take off the EW, and our root is oatin.
Odin.
So we want to say Jen took Bill. No, what do we want to say? I took Jen, or
No, Jen took Bill.
okay.
isn't that
So we want,
second person, third person? No, third person.
no, you're right. So what do you
Is
find?
it third person?
Third person singular to third person with the tick.
Okay, so that would be didn't.
Yeah, so in this case, it's the same one as we found in the dictionary. And we just add whoever the subject is and put an A afterwards, and that would mean the fourth person, like
Okay.
Otneo Bila.
What about pussy ass?
It's just an inside joke. We stumbled across the wrong word in a THY conversion. I think we were trying to, it doesn't matter. It was just it fell between the dialects. We came upon a kind of an ugly word.
I'm on a roll.
Okay,
I'm focused.
let's use the same verb. So we know if we take off EW, that's the verb root. I want to say, I take him or her.
1 S
To 3S.
to 3 S. Him or her, one person, right? So singular?
Yeah. So you go to the left column, the leftmost column,
Yeah.
and what's the thing in the front?
No.
Okay, so we've got ni, and then we have a blank,
Yeah.
and then what do we have afterwards it?
AW.
AW.
But
Okay,
I need a T.
right. And that follows through your patterns, right? Anytime a verb root, this is something that you know, so you can just apply it. But if you're learning this is part of these patterns we're talking about, and it's in all of them, that if you are in the independent, and I guess it won't be in VAI, but it won't be in this one, but in these three, if your verb starts with a vowel, then you have to add a T. But,
nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. That's why I said
yeah,
to
that's
Derek
why,
yesterday, I need the T there, right? nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin. And he's like, what?
right, because as a fluent speaker, you don't think about any of this. This is like, this would be the equivalent of you sitting there listening to me say all these words right now and trying to figure out each single word. Like, it doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
They're master pianists. They're masters at their instruments.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out how to play a C major scale, right? Like,
Yeah, well, you're just about there, bro.
so this is a VAI, but it still has this T rule. I want to show you something real quick as a side note right here.
Okay.
How do I say I worked?
nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin.
No, I worked in the past. Nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin.
Past tense, G.
Niki. That's not what I said? Niki.
Notice
But I put
we
a T in there.
notice we put a hyphen. When there's a hyphen,
Okay.
when there's a hyphen, you don't need a T.
Oh,
So if you put that into conjunct,
yeah. Yeah.
if you put it in the conjunct, what do you have? No, what's right here? That's a hyphen.
A hyphen.
So you don't have to put a T there. You don't put a T there because there's a hyphen. The hyphen tells you you don't need a T.
Yeah, when you're talking, you don't say nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin.
No, but when you read, the hyphen tells you how to
that's
pronounce it.
When you're reading, yeah.
And also, here's an interesting thing about the
Even
hyphens.
though the E is an I, a long I.
Yes, in TH, the E becomes a long I.
I'm
But
just
if you're,
letting you ride.
okay, so Miyogi-sagao. Where's the stress in that word?
nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin.
Okay, do we remember our pattern for finding the stress? Do you remember that?
Third syllable?
Third syllable back. 1, 2. So right here, right? Miyogi-sagao. Not Miyogi-sagao, or not Miyogi-sagao, right? Miyogi-sagao.
Yeah.
But we know that if we have only 2 syllables, it's the last syllable, right?
Yeah.
So nipa.
Yeah.
You know when we say, I'll put it in TH for you, Christine. Mido nipa.
Uh-huh.
Notice the hyphen?
Yeah.
That's because the stress pattern's still here. When you have a hyphen, it doesn't reset the stress pattern.
Oh, sorry, I heard you say that with a short A.
Nipa, no, that means die.
Yeah.
No. Nipa, sorry. But you have a stress.
That A has to be long. Nipa.
Nipa.
Otherwise you're telling them
Nipa.
to kill him good. You don't nipa.
A good death.
But here's another reason for this hyphen. There's 2 reasons for the hyphen. One, it doesn't reset the stress. If I write this nīhithaw, nipa, just to enunciate it. That says, pronounce it nīhithaw-nipa. And that doesn't sound right, as Solomon just proved. I laughed, right?
Yeah.
Because your stress stays, this is still a two-syllable word, and this is a two-syllable preverb, so your stress is on the last syllable. But if you connect them, then it becomes a four-syllable word, and your stress goes to the third last syllable, which is nīhithaw-nipa, which doesn't make sense. It's nīhithaw-nipa. So that is one reason for the hyphen. The other reason for the hyphen is so that you can tell whether you can use the other part of the word again. So in nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, again, this is th, the th would change to a y in y dialect. In nīhithaw-ācathōhkāniwin, you can use the word gīsagau. But in nīhithaw-kwame, sleep well, you can't say kwame. That's not a word. This part is not a word on its own, so they have to be connected. Plus, the stress pattern's here. nīhithaw-kwame. Does that make sense? So there's two reasons for hyphenating the way it does. You see people write like E-H, apit. That's eapit. That's not eapit, right? Because that changes the stress pattern to here. But with SRO, if you write it eapit, your stress pattern's here because it's a two-syllable word. So the hyphen maintains what's a word and where the stress is. That's just a side note, but I wanted to cover that just because when I started out, I couldn't figure out why everyone, like I would conjugate it properly and I would say it and everyone would be like, I don't know what you're saying. Because I was sitting there being like, medicinal, you know, for medicinal purposes. And everyone's like, you mean medicinal? Oh yeah, I mean, that's what I said, medicinal. No, you mean medicinal. Yeah, medicinal. No, medicinal. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until I did a fair amount of reading that I figured this out and a fair amount of experimentation. But that's why it's written that way.
In this case, you don't, because in this case, you don't need that TA because of the stress pattern.
Sorry, which
The
T?
way it's written with the E.
Yeah.
With the E and the hyphen means you don't need the...
Which one are we talking about? Sorry.
Well,
Yep.
what you're doing there.
This one or here? Or
Yep.
so in eapit? Yeah, so if we were to put that the other way, and again, you know this, if I said nitapin, since ni doesn't have a hyphen after it, we have to put it in a T.
Okay.
You'll see sometimes online people will write it nī-hyphen-tap-in. Or you'll see people, they write it nī-we-hyphen-ap-in, right? But there's no hyphen after ni because it has this weird T rule. And if we write it nī-hyphen-tap-in, this is like a preverb of ni, which doesn't exist. And this is tap in, which I don't know, is tap in a word? I don't think so, yeah. So this way, not this way, sorry, this way or this way, when we learn the rules of the system, it tells us so many more things than if we just write it randomly, right? Again, to a fluent speaker, I agree, they don't need this. They're already there. You know, like if this is a forest and we're hiking through and we're trying to find fluency, they're already hanging out there. But we got to try and find a path to get there, right? So that's kind of...
You have to find the path to get there.
Is that clear as mud?
I don't know.
You want to do one
I
more? Or?
just wanted to let Myrtle know, as well as Merle, just in case you come across it, when it's written, for us up here, the E, when you say E up bit, is
Sorry.
not E.
That's a good point.
It's
So
an I. So that when you see it, you'll see both, but I'm just letting you know that it's I, a long I. E a bit.
right. So sorry, we're in two different dialects.
You mentioned that before.
Yeah. So that was in Solomon's presentation about Y to TH, and so I don't really want to redo his presentation, but I'll put that video should be up too as well, so people can review that if they're getting mixed up between the two. We're kind of in a fun zone here where we get to play in both dialects. So, yeah, is that clear, Christina? Or do you want to do anything more?
No, if you think that's a good enough video, yeah.
It's good. It's good for.
Overdo it too much. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.